Third-person action RPGs are awesome and do have subgenres within them as well, from character action, action-adventure, extraction RPGs, and perhaps controversially, Metroidvanias as well. So let's begin with ENENRA Daemon Core, a sleek-looking action title that sure has Devil May Cry vibes, with free-flowing multi-target attacks mixed in with single-target combat. In this world, every character has a daemon core where a mercenary company recruits from the best, and you play as such a mercenary with access to 3 combat stances, 5 variations on katanas, weapon abilities, traversal options, and so much more. A very cool looking title with a throwback look is Metro Gravity, one that plays with perspective and gravity as you wander the dreamlike world of the halls, characterized by twisting passages and alleys, and has a liminal spaces vibe, having to figure out where to go and looks like quite the trip. This is mixed in with a combat element and does bill itself as a Metroidvania, with there being rhythm game elements to combat since you need to time your parries, dodges and jumps to the beat of the song, and looks awesome. This video is brought to you by Legacy, Steel and Sorcery, an action-packed PvPvE extraction RPG set in the fantasy world of MIGHTREYA, in which you can play solo or team up with 2 other friends to take on challenging monsters and bosses in the world, but do have to keep an eye out for other players attempting to do the same. This is not just your regular action-adventure RPG, since everyone's hard-earned loot is on the line out in the wilderness, increasing the tension behind every combat encounter. Players can choose from a variety of character classes like warrior or priest, where each have their own unique way of interacting with the world, since warriors can charge and smash through walls to get the jump on enemies, while priests, for example, could levitate over danger to get away. Combat was designed from the ground up for PvP, with the precision of attacks and the tactical use of special abilities being key, with active dodge, block, sprint, attack and cast, so you are fully in control. In between the combat sections, you can retreat to the safety behind the stone walls of the city, taking the time to rest, organize your loot, upgrade, craft and prepare for the next expedition, with vendors to interact with, quests to complete and much more. This releases in Steam Early Access on February 12, 2025, with the core gameplay loop in place and has 4 playable classes and 1 main map, with more characters, locations, monsters, items, a guild system and more to be added, so if interested, buy it on release. I follow the developer of Foxtale on Twitter since the game looks neat, starring, of course, a fox, which is the animal of choice in many games, but Tunic this is not, instead having a very interesting looking sci-fi medieval setting where you were living peacefully with the other animals when suddenly an alien armada descends on the planet and you need to fight back. Sure, it's not the most polished title on this list, but it does seem kind of neat, mixing 2 settings together which are not often mixed together, with both melee combat through your sword, as well as ranged weapons and alien technology, and even the ability to call in airstrikes being rather indie games, so support this developer if interested. A rather classic looking Zelda-inspired title is Altheia the Wrath of Aferi, in which a sword-wielding guardian and an arcane monk must work together to defeat a great evil known as the Void, which is corrupting their homeland. Our protagonist loses her mother to an ancient evil and wants nothing to do with her legacy of being a guardian, but she does end up saving the monk in training, and together they will explore ruined temples, solve environmental puzzles, rescue spirits and battle formidable void monsters on their quest. It is inspired by the works of not only Studio Ghibli, but also Studio Chizu, whose most recent work is Belle, with this game having a very interesting visual style and colour palette which makes it stand out. One cool thing about covering indie games is that I'm not limited to games which basically all look the same and come from the same handful of developers, with HARUKA Beyond the Stars coming to us from a new Japanese indie team that has just 2 people listed on their website, but one of the developers did work on Gitaru Man and Elite Beat Agent, so there is some precedent here. But this is a self-described juvenile sci-fi RPG that looks awesome. You will embark on an intergalactic journey featuring expansive planetary exploration, which encourages you to delve into vast fields, uncover secrets, and solve environmental puzzles, where of course, we do have to talk about combat. This allows you to switch between the two characters, each possessing unique abilities, having to be strategic about which abilities you use, with of course monstrous bosses to contend with as well. With a manga-like presentation to the story combined with one of the most beautiful art styles that I have come across, and while this trailer is in Japanese, they do have a publisher in Playism who have a good track record with localization, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I had Forsaken Realms Vahrin's Call on my list last year, and I'm pretty sure that the 2025 release window is new and the developer is rather active on social media sharing clips of the game, so I am inclined to believe that a release is in the cards. Set in the high fantasy world of Leda, this is a story-driven action RPG where players assume the role of a mercenary journeying towards the war-torn city of Vahrin, completely unaware of the role that they are about to play that will affect the fate of the city. The game has semi-open areas filled with enemies, quests, puzzles, loot and NPCs, as well as more structured dungeons with the real-time dynamic combat looking good, mixing melee attacks, magic spells, unique abilities and more against a wide variety of enemies, and has a great look as well. A sleek action title is Spine. This is Gunfu, in which you play as a rebellious street artist named Redline on a quest to find her captured brother in a cyberpunk city. The close quarters combat looks sick, blending gunplay with martial arts, allowing you to fluidly chain together acrobatic maneuvers, melee attack and precise gunfire to dispatch enemies, and is one of the more hyped titles on this list. A neat looking action RPG is Buramato, where the most interesting part is that this draws upon traditional Bornean folk tales, which is not something you see every day, coming to us from Indonesian developer OZ Games, so Southeast Asia represent. You will explore vast atmospheric landscapes which look absolutely gorgeous and will engage in fast-paced third-person action. Your character has lost his memories, and the mask you are wearing prevents you from talking as well, but you somehow have the goal of setting a mysterious girl free who is located at the top of the Lord's domain, and go about on your quest and simply looks gorgeous. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to another cursed term, since next to Souls-like and roguelites, the developer of Luminous Nights has termed their game a Hearts-like title, which I suppose is a fair enough shorthand to mean games like Kingdom Hearts, but still. This is inspired by 1001 Arabian Nights seen in the setting and character designs, in which you adventure to defeat the evil Masked King. I'm not a Kingdom Hearts person, even if I did dabble with one and those GBA ones, so if you are, please let me know what makes this a Hearts-like, where the action does look neat and does have 3D platforming elements as well. I guess the shadowy, dark creature design is a callback to the Heartless, but it does look pretty good overall and might be of note. We did get a new trailer for Showa American Story as well, and it continues to look awesome, where progress is good, and it does have a Q4 2025 release window, so there's the news, in which this action RPG is a tribute to 1980s pop culture infused with a strong B-movie aesthetic, with action looking to be equally inspired by those films as well. Set in a post-apocalyptic America, heavily influenced by Japanese culture, you play as a teenage girl mysteriously revived from the dead on a journey of truth and revenge across North America. Visit locations like New Yokohama, New Tokyo, San Francisco and more, battling hordes of zombies, monsters and hostile human survivors. Combat involves third-person action with both melee weapons and guns, including some overpowered looking special attacks and abilities like a drill, as well as challenging boss fights and a dose of Japanese weirdness. Strangely enough, this appears to be from a Chinese studio whose other game listed on Steam is Dying Reborn from 2018, an escape room horror puzzle game with about 170 Steam reviews as of recording, so this is quite the change in genre and scope. but it is cool and weird, so keep an eye on it. There's also news with regards to Gedonia 2, since this has an early access release date in March and is a follow-up to a popular title from 2022, which, if you can believe it, is 3 years ago, which did revamp the art style, looking much sharper and with much less bloom and motion blur, but still retains that charming throwback 2000s look. Both entries are open-world action RPGs, with the major change in this sequel being that you can team up with up to 3 friends in online co-op, which should amplify the chaos and insanity as you go about exploring this fantasy world. The game emphasizes freedom, allowing you to build unique characters by combining various skills and abilities, exploring the vast world and encountering dynamic events, challenging enemies and hidden treasures. There are survival elements such as hunger, thirst, temperature, and so on, with crafting playing a significant role since you need to create weapons, armor, and other essential items. And since it is releasing very soon, be sure to wishlist the game to get an email when it releases. Full disclosure, I have not played the original Gothic 1 from 2001, but have heard stories of their influence on video games and even game developers making its way into titles like Drova Forsaken Kin from 2024. So if you are like me, perhaps the remake will be of interest. Revisit the Valley of the Mines, in which you play as a nameless hero thrust into a world where the kingdom is under siege by orcs and, desperate for weapons, the king forces all prisoners to mine magical ore. However, a magic spell gone wrong causes the prisoners to revolt and to take control, where the king must now negotiate with these new rulers, all against the backdrop of impending invasion. This is a faithful remake and will have a handcrafted open world with dynamic combat, where NPCs are on their own realistic daily routines and provide immersion in this living, breathing world. The combat and skill system will remain the same as in the original, but does add new mechanics like rock climbing and expanded crafting, looking excellent and is in line with modern games. Another character action title of interest is MIGHTREYA, an anime-inspired action game where you assume the role of schoolgirl superhero Rhea, accompanied by her manager Neo, as they combat monstrous beings emerging daily from another dimension while being hero content creators. Yes, even saving the world is not exempted from becoming content in this world, with the electrifying aerial battles looking fun as you effortlessly move through the air, lock onto enemies and unleash your attacks. I like the variety of monsters and enemies shown off, reminding me of One Punch Man, where this is a linear title with 38 stages and 24 enemy types including bosses, so if you want a bit more structure and are sick of all the open world games and endlessly replayable roguelites, this might be worth keeping an eye on. Speaking of anime action titles, a game that is also that is Homura Hime, a third-person character action game with intense combat, having a bullet hell element as well, which could be interesting. In this world, human souls harboring strong emotions and deep regrets at the time of their death transform into powerful archdemons who in turn corrupt the world and creatures around them, where Homura Hime is also known as the Flame Princess and is the strongest exorcist sent to purify the world. Of course, this is very Japanese in terms of theme and setting, with some rather intense looking combat against both regular enemies and bosses, with it reminding me of Fury, but with demon girls instead, and looks great. HYPERxFANTASY is a sick-looking narrative action RPG set in a brutalist dystopia on the brink of a digital apocalypse. You are exploring a massive, decaying megastructure along with your companion, meeting strange characters and fighting enemies in tense sword fights as you unravel a deep, unsettling conspiracy, having to guide the souls of the people into the digital afterlife. There is supposed to be an insane narrative full of twists and turns, but I do love the visuals, giving off near automata vibes and is one to watch. I just cracked a smile when I first came across this title, since the Knightling is a third-person action-adventure platformer that has an almost PS2 era look and feel to the game, in which you are equipped with only a legendary shield, using it in combat, but also traversal on your quest to search for your missing mentor, and looks absolutely gorgeous and is high up on my personal wish list. I'm not quite sure what the developers are doing with the marketing of this game, since to date DuskFade still does not have a Steam page, despite it going kind of viral on social media, which is a waste of Steam wishlists in my opinion. But this Hearts-like action RPG does look neat, down to the not keyblade that the character is wielding. As compared to Luminous Nights mentioned earlier, this is much more overt in its Kingdom Hearts inspiration, especially in the designs of the enemies, but does look very modern and nice in terms of visuals. They are gearing up for a Kickstarter, so it might be a while before the full release, where this comes to us from the developer of Clit the Snail, which is an alright top-down shooter, so this is quite the departure as well. The developer of Withersworn has a YouTube channel with several of their videos going viral, but I did first catch wind of this on Twitter with the self-described high action, high mobility and high fantasy adventure looking very appealing to me. You play as an elite knight on a quest to stop the Withering, a name given to the process where a powerful resource named resin has quickly advanced human society technologically but at the cost of their own humanity. Movement and traversal are the central focus here, where you can ride aboard on the sand dunes at high speed, which is comboed with a grappling hook, using this to achieve great heights or even to battle gigantic monsters. As such, there is an inherent appeal to this game of just being able to swing and move and attack, and while perhaps not the most visually impressive, combat should be the highlight and is one to watch. On paper, this next title is one of the most anticipated games on Steam, since Blight Survival did go viral as well and got a lot of attention due to its depiction of a brutal medieval world with, drumroll please, zombies. Not the most original of ideas, but it does give you the mission of finding and destroying the source of the Blight, a disease of sorts that is warping both man and beast. There was some talk of it being a roguelite that has since been changed to a cooperative PvE extraction light, so maybe the developers are still trying to find the fun with this game. However, while we have not had any new gameplay trailers, the developers are active on Twitter and are showing updates, so it is not a dead game by any means, so hopefully we will have a more official update sooner rather than later. Another very pretty looking action RPG is Anima Song from the Abyss, one that sure looks like a MiHoYo game like Genshin Impact in terms of visuals, but it's a single player title with an epic multifaceted story, and your actions will determine the fates of the characters in the world. This is set in the world of Gaia from the Anima Beyond Fantasy tabletop RPG books, which I'm not familiar with, having a very interesting twin character setup where for some reason you are able to seamlessly swap between them even while mid-combo and could lead to interesting combat. On top of the fast-paced hack-and-slash action, exploration and platforming in the world fleshes out the experience, but I do want to specially mention the enemy designs which look awesome, from giant dragon types, stone golems, demons, devil ladies and more, and looks great. Switching gears quite starkly is Gunmetal Gothic, a cooperative shooter RPG with a retro 3D aesthetic reminiscent of the late 1990s, in which you are fighting to take back the city of Vestige, now overrun by demonic machines from another dimension. As the last line of defense for the survivors, shoot, cast and maneuver your way to victory with a loadout system and build variety as you take on waves of enemies. They do talk about finishing stages and achieving a high score, so maybe some arcade influence, but does also talk about customizing your characters with weapons, spells and gear, as well as an upgrade system, so I guess it counts as an RPG, but the visuals alone makes it immediately stand out. Another title which I caught wind of on Twitter is Moto Slice, one of the sleekest looking action-adventure titles in which you can parry a giant truck, but also has you exploring the ruins of a mega structure and is said to take influence from Prince of Persia and Mirror's Edge. When I say inspired by, you definitely see it in the parkour animations, especially the wall running and how she places a hand on the wall, as well as the climbing and rotating around a vertical structure and also swinging on horizontal poles. Combat against regular enemies appear to be much snappier as compared to the Sands of Time, for example, but then again, you're wielding a chainsaw that allows you to cut through enemies. You have to climb and dismantle the giant bosses piece by piece, so maybe some Shadow of the Colossus as well, where this game just looks cool and I cannot wait to play. Parry a truck, eye raise, parrying gravity, a house, or how about a nuke? These are but some of the insane things that you can do in VA Proxy, and the developer has appropriately gone viral many times because of the things they put in their game, which you can see glimpses of in the various demos that they have released, including gigantic enemies, the ability to hop on and ride on your own missiles, or simply combat from way too high up in the sky on the backs of gigantic mechanical monstrosities, where we still don't have a release date for this game, but it feels like something should be announced soon. Call me old school, but for the most part, I think of Metroidvanias as 2D side-scrollers, so when a developer says that they are making a 3D Metroidvania, I think more action-adventure RPG instead, even if it does have backtracking and traversal ability unlocks, but genre semantics aside, Abyss Cross Zero sure looks to be awesome. This is from studio Pixelpunk, known for their previous game Unsighted, where it has quite an interesting setup since you control two different characters, codename A and codename Z, who are fated to battle each other, with the game presumably being their epic journey before the final clash. I'm not sure how the final encounter of the game would play out, but if Unsighted is anything to go by, you could very well be forced to choose either and to kill off the other character, with the minute-to-minute action looking great, aided by the throwback visuals as well. Things have been quiet with regards to this game, but that might just be because of turmoil at their publisher Annapurna, where the developer is still sharing updates of "we kill monsters" on social media, so this is by no means a dead game. You play as homunculi, created to explore a massive pit named the Shell, hunting down beings known as angels for their primordial fluids to keep the city alive, with a camping system for cooking, sleeping, trade, or playing music with other players, but does look pretty intense and awesome. Watch this video if you were looking for isometric loot-driven action RPGs instead.